what are some common mistakes maybe that e-commerce sellers are making, and how would you correct for that? I mean, I suppose it depends on the mistake, right? But what are you seeing generally most commonly?
So one of the most common mistake that we see with sellers is that search that I mentioned earlier. So actually choosing a brand, doing a quick Google search, and then kind of, okay, let's do it. And then you manufacture, you start sending the products to Amazon, you start gathering reviews, and then like, okay, and it's time to protect it. Let's file for a trademark. But then at this stage, sometimes I would tell you, sorry, this cannot be trademarked because it's already taken. Somebody has already trademarked this, or somebody has already trademarked something similar that blocks you. So, not necessarily identical, even something similar could block you. And then what do? You cannot change your brand on Amazon. You can't. So, what you have to do is actually reopen a new listing with a new brand and kind of do it all over again. So, what we recommend is that sellers actually, choose one, two, or three potential brands. Go do a search, ask your attorney to do it. By the way, it doesn't cost more because usually they would retract that cost from the registration that you do later. So ask your attorney to conduct a search. They tell you yes, and then you can manufacture, and then later or immediately you can file for a trademark. So that's a common mistake. And it's crucial when it happens when you have like 600 reviews or 200 reviews that you invested a lot of money to get there, and then you have to do it all over again. So it's hard. Or you can say, okay, I won't have a trademark. I'm infringing. I'm continuing with this brand. But then at the end of the road, nobody will buy your business. So strongly recommend conducting the search. And then another mistake that we see, and that takes us back to what I explained about copyrights. A lot of people rely on their supplier when it comes to the design. And so you have, for example, you manufacture paper plates with a cool dog on, or I don't know, a laughing cat or something, a jumping cat that you see there, and that your supplier suggested to you. Okay, so he just showed you the inventory of products that they have, and you can choose. But then in the catalog, I mean, these are not necessarily designs that your supplier has designed. And sometimes it was a client from the past. And then you start selling those paper plates and you get a complaint and somebody suspends your listing from Amazon. So you don't want to get there. If you want to sell paper plates with jumping cats, I don't know why you would do that, but if you really want to, then have your own graphic designers. Just take someone, even from Fiverr. It's not very expensive, and design your own. Not only you won't be infringing any copyrights, but you would also be owner of copyrights because remember, like you produce something that's yours, even if you haven't filed a copyright. So these are the two most common mistakes. I mean, they sometimes take other people's graphic design. Sometimes they just take two or three sentences from another listing. They didn't know that it's not allowed. Or sometimes they take an image from Google because they thought that it's okay because it's on the internet, but it's not. You can't take any image from anyone. So just use your own photographer, use your own graphic designer, write your own sentences. There's Chat GPT these days that can write for you. Then you won't be infringing any copyrights.
Those are some great points. So thank you very much for sharing those. And it really seems like doing that extra step in the beginning really saves you in the long run by doing those searches as you suggested, making sure that you're not using a name that's similar to somebody else's name or exactly like somebody else's name. You're going to save yourself so many headaches down the line. And so that's fantastic. And then something that you brought up in there was once you get to the point when you're ready to sell, you may not be able to because if you've used somebody else's name, that's gonna be a big, like, red
Right.
flag, and somebody's not gonna be wanting to purchase your company because you don't have the rights to the images or the names or logos or whatever that, you maybe thought you could use.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine you're a buyer and you want to buy an e-commerce business. Which business would you buy? The one that has a protected brand that can fight any hijacker, any infringer, anyone, or a brand that sells well on Amazon or Shopify or whatever, but the brand isn't protected. And not only that, it cannot be protected because somebody else has protected it. You're actually infringing a trademark. Which one would you choose? You choose the one that's protected. So that's kind of the first requirement of most buyers, protected trademark. And speaking, by the way, of mistakes, many sellers protect their trademark for the first product that they do. Okay, because a trademark is not general, it protects certain products. So, for example, Nike is protected in class 25 in relation to clothing, I don't know, socks and shoes. Okay. But they're not protected for watches. Maybe they are for watches, but not for restaurants, for example. So with Nike, they're so famous that you can't use it for restaurants. But with any other trademark, you can actually, if it's protected in one category, you can use it in another category. So the most common mistake, one of the most common mistakes that we see, they protect it once for one product, but then they developed. They sold, I don't know, the microphone earlier, but now 2 years later, they switched to beauty and they sell deodorants or makeup, and that's in a completely different category. But the trademark is still for microphones, and that's a different class. It means that you're not protected for the other products that you actually sell, and that's a problem. Again, going back to exits, nobody will buy your deodorant business if it's protected for microphones. So remember to refresh and think about trademarking every time you have at least a new category.
Oh, excellent. Great point, and never would have thought of that, honestly, because you do sort of think like, "I've got the trademark. That's it, it's done." But, like, as you just explained, that wouldn't apply in a completely different category. And obviously, like you mentioned, Nike, is a huge, huge brand, and they pretty much have the market covered on that in whatever area you try to go in because 'cause they're so huge. But when you're talking about a smaller seller, individual that's running a smaller company, that wouldn't hold water, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we finish this podcast, I imagine you like searching for pockets of knowledge and then applying for the trademark and adding your little TM. By the way, I just explained this morning when do you use the little TM and when do you use the circled R. So TM you can use whenever you have a brand that you invented, it's yours and you use it as a trademark. And maybe you have conducted the search to make sure you're not infringing, you can already add the TM even before you file for a trademark. So you today, this afternoon, you can add your little TM. The circled R, you can only add it when you've registered the brand. So when you completed the registration, that can take a year to complete.